Hello everyone and welcome to the news today. We are going to discuss 21st of November, all the important events of today. We are going to discuss the news items. I'll explain to you the developments, the key aspects which you need to be focusing on so that this whole process of daily current affairs becomes easier and smoother for you. Let's first go through the main headlines. So the main news which we are covering today, there are 5 news items. The first one is India's record food grain production as per crop production estimates of 2024-25. Then UNICEF releases the State of the World's Children 2025 report. Judiciary cannot, then the next news is judiciary cannot impose timelines on president and governors. This is what the Supreme Court has said. So see different kinds of reports, different Supreme Court judgments, they are very important. They give you a lot of insight. India Justice Report highlights gap in juvenile justice laws functioning. And the last one is Supreme Court directed the center to prepare a management plan for sustainable mining for Aravallis. Other than this, we also have some quick updates which we'll be talking about. So we'll talk about dark patterns. You'll get to know what this means. Then you have Javelin and Excalibur. These are two weapons which India is going to acquire. Then there is news on Indian shipping vessels. Then we'll go into the term pharmacogenomics. After that, we have ORS, oral rehydration solution. Then joint crediting mechanism. After this, you have the recently ongoing COP in Brazil. Then in that, you have global Motirao, and the place in news is Seychelles. So we are going to talk about all of these things one by one. Let's start with the first article. So India this year has recorded an increase in its food grain production. So the recent estimates have come in for what production has happened. The Union Ministry of Agriculture has released this data, and the production of crops has increased. So this is being highlighted here. So in almost all of the primary staple crops, rice, wheat, maize, in all of them, there is increase, there is growth which is observed. A large part of this growth has come from other crops or other types of crops also other than the primary staple grains. So like oil seeds, they have recorded an increase of over 8% as compared to the last year, 2023-24. And there are also increases specifically in soybean in groundnut. Both of these are used as oil seeds also, so that's contributing to this. So the more of this produce we do in India, the more secure we are in terms of our food needs. And the government has been working for this goal, for increasing production. There are some key schemes which we can link towards this development. I want to highlight those schemes for you because whenever you're writing answers in terms of what the government is doing or should be doing, the government schemes always are going to be very significant points. So these are some schemes here. So first is the minimum support price, MSP. I'm sure everybody has heard about that. MSP gives an assurance to our farmers for production of different things. And this MSP has been extended to many crops, like to different kinds of pulses. You have this, which is making sure that the production is increasing. Then you have a specific mission for pulses. It's called self-reliance in pulses mission. So there are a lot of pulses which we have to import also. Now we want to be Atmanirbhar in this. We want to have self-reliance in this. So there's a dedicated mission for this. So this is a recent mission. The timeline will go up to 2030, 2031. For that period, different kinds of initiatives will be taken to boost indigenous pulse production. Then you have, for dedicated towards irrigation, agriculture is very monsoon dependent, so any kind of irrigation help which we can get, that will make it more secure. The unpredictable nature of monsoons, that can be bridged through this. So you have Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. This is just one program. There are a number of other schemes also. Then you have National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture. So agriculture has to be sustainable so that soil fertility ecosystem is not damaged in the long run. So in this, there is promotion of things like alternative methods of like non-conventional methods of agriculture, or things like organic fertilizers, which are better for the crop, for the soil, for the environment, and can sustain long-term agriculture. So those kind of things are incorporated through this mission, right? Further, we'll go on to our second news of the day. So this is on a recent report which UNICEF has released. So this is UNICEF releases the State of the World's Children 2025 report. Okay, so the theme here in this is child poverty. Okay. So we're going to talk about child poverty, different aspects of child poverty, and the special information which has come out of this report. We are going to learn about that. So let's look at the report first. So this is the State of the World's Children report, and the theme here is ending child poverty, which is our shared imperative, the shared imperative of the world, that we must work towards ending child poverty. Then what it is going to be recording is that it has collected data from over 130 low income and middle income countries. Okay, low income countries, middle income countries, they're going to take data from these countries. They have taken and recorded data here, and they're going to look at multi-dimensional aspect of poverty. See, poverty is basically, when we talk about somebody being in poverty or being poor, we just look at the monetary aspect, that okay, this person does not have money. But there are multiple dimensions to it. And this report is going to record 6 of those dimensions. So it's talking about education. Education has to be there for children. Then their health, their growing period needs a specific kind of care of their health which has to be given. Then proper housing, nutrition, sanitation, and water. These are the 6 indicators on which they are going to be assessing different countries, and overall data will be collected, and we have the findings now available to us. So let's see what are the key observations here. Okay. So first it talks about monetary policy in terms of money, right? That's our most basic understanding. So they say 19% of the children globally live in extreme monetary poverty, and the objective quantifiable, the quantity here is that it is less than $3 per day. This is the first observation. Second, they say that more than 1 in 5 children in these low and middle income countries are severely deprived on at least 2 vital areas, right? So it has assessed for total of 6 areas. So they say at least 2 are deprived, 2 are deficient in 1 out of 5 children, right? Which is critical for their development and well-being. So it's a problem. For India also, if we look specifically, so if we look at like just one deprivation, we have more than 200 million children in India who are deprived on these parameters. That's what the observation has come out of this report. Okay, so for us, poverty as such is a big issue, but within this also, specifics of children or how it's impacting children, there also the number is huge. After this, you have sanitation is the most widespread severe deprivation which increases the children's exposure to diseases. So sanitation means cleanliness, issues of hygiene, and because of that there is going to be disease, and this is the biggest problem, most widespread, most commonly observed. Then you have highest rates of multidimensional poverty if we look at area wise regionally. So the regions are Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. These are the places where there are multiple dimensions of poverty, most prevalent if we compare it to the whole world, or all the, at least the 130 countries which they have evaluated. Now let's see what are the factors which are contributing to this poverty, this multi-dimensional poverty, along with, of course, uh, the direct idea that these indicators are missing. There can be some things which might be contributing to that. One of the factors is conflicts. Anywhere where there's conflict, there's war, there is civil unrest condition, that will be a problem for development. Then climate crisis. A lot of these low and middle income countries, they're island nations, they're really bearing the brunt of climate crisis. After that, you have mounting national debt. There are lack of resources there for provision of any of these things because the countries are already in debt. Then there is widening technological divide. So technology as such as an idea is supposed to help everybody, but technology does not help everybody. It helps or it favors those who have access to it through economic means. So that also creates that gap. Then if you have this, how is this going to impact? What is the long-term problem with this kind of a situation? First is, of course, a child's health. The child is in a growing period. If he is not going to be healthy, then his growth is going to be impaired. He'll have access to more diseases. He'll not be as productive as he should be. If he doesn't have access to education, his learning is going to be impaired. He'll not be able to have the tools to, progress later on also in life, which means his prospects for future jobs are also going to be low. And as such, if his health is also not on his side, that means he's also going to be a less productive workforce member. All of these create situations of mental disturbances, depression, anxiety, because of those unideal conditions. Then, of course, the next step would be when you have multidimensional poverty, things not improving, that is the breeding ground for violence, extremism, or anybody who wants to promote extremism. This kind of a situation would be the most ideal one for promoting means of violence and extremism. So that's what comes out of multidimensional poverty. Now, there is this discussion that there are some key things which can be done to ensure there is no child poverty or that child poverty can be reduced. And this is a very good explanation, 5 policy prerogatives. Once I'll explain them to you, it'll make sense that yes, this is what should be done. The first thing is that you have to talk about this. Child poverty should be a national priority. Okay, it should be a theme which should be considered important and not ignored. And that means the first step would be that a child's needs have to be incorporated in the economic policies. When you are making your budgets, you should incorporate for child poverty and means to address that. There can be different ways of doing that. One thing is that you can have different social protection programs for children and their families. Like there are practices where cash transfers are given based on the children which you have or the number of children which you have, so that you can take care of them, you can support them, you can send them to school. So that is something which can be done to make those families with children become more secure. Then you have to increase access to public services. Public services means health, education, nutrition, sanitation. Sanitation is mainly a public service. To a large extent, it is managed by public resources. So that has to be emphasized. That has to be done in a better way. That has to be expanded. And then, of course, economic security of parents. That means general laws of how workforce is supposed to be there, promoting decent options of work, minimum wages, and different policies which can support employment or generate employment and secure employment, which would mean that monetarily, economically also, you'll be able to bring that whole system and those children out of poverty. Okay, so this is what this report is drawing our attention towards. Very important theme. The next topic also has something to do with children. This is India's Justice Report highlights gap in juvenile justice laws functioning. So juvenile justice is special set of laws which are going to be uh, put on or which are going to be managing the children under the age of 18 years, and we'll see what this whole setup is or what this whole report is about. Okay, so in India, you have a Juvenile Justice Act which was enacted in 2015. Now it has been 10 years of this act being in place. So this is like a big time for assessment of how the provisions of this particular law have worked out, how the system is keeping itself ready for juvenile justice. As such, this India Justice Report is a biennial index. So what it does is every 2 years, they're going to look at all the developments in all different states and different union territories, and then they kind of create an index. They'll kind of give a ranking system of what is being done in which state. But this year, because it's 10 years, sufficient time has passed for the system to have possibly, set itself or for the structure to have been in place. So it's a good point of evaluation. We'll first talk about the act and then we'll see what the report is telling us about this. Okay, so let's see. So Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act of 2015. So there are two terms which you need to know here. First is child in conflict with the law. So this is the standard term under this law. So they are called CCL, child in conflict with the law. And the second is child in need of care and protection. Because of any situation, if the child needs additional care or protection, that's CCP. Okay, so these terms have been emphasized, have been brought out through this act. Okay, now the CCL or the child in conflict with law means a child which is below the age of 18 years. Okay, and who has committed some crimes, committed some offense. So that is what it was, what it means. 18 years and below and in conflict with the law, some offense is there. So for this, what they have said is that there's a juvenile justice board which is supposed to be set up. So there's a board which should be in every district. Okay, so whatever cases are there for CCLs, for that there is a board. And for implementation of this setup, you have a National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, and you also have similar state commissions for protection of child rights. So they are going to be the implementation authorities. They will be making sure and monitoring everything if everything is happening properly. Then there is a situation where somebody who is above 16 years but has committed a very heinous offense. Okay, like a very serious offense. So like you had this Nirbhaya case, and in which the convicts which were there, one of them was a juvenile. Juvenile means he was more than 16 years but less than 18 years, and the crime was of heinous nature because a girl was raped and then she died also. So there what has to be done is that there is an assessment which has to be made based on the development of the child, his situation, the kind of crime, all of that is considered, and that decides if this child can be tried as an adult. There is also this situation that there is a possibility if the crime is very severe, even if the child's development is sufficient, mental, physical, all of that. So a child in that case, when he's above 16, can be tried as an adult also, but there needs to be a proper assessment of that. Okay, there needs to be a preliminary assessment of that whole situation, if that can be done or if it cannot be done, and that's also a part of this act. Okay, now let's see what the report is telling us. Have all these things been implemented or no? We're going to look at that. So first is there is inconsistent juvenile justice boards. They were supposed to be in all districts, but they are not there in All districts. Okay, you have very few states in which all their districts have been properly covered with this. So there is inconsistency in this. We haven't been able to bring them to all the districts. Then there are rising cases of backlogs. Like if they see the data, what they found out was like in the last 1 year, only 45% of the cases were tried. Okay, that means 55% is still pending. The number of cases which came, they're not able to manage that. Then high institutionalization of observation homes. See, under this act, there are different terms used for different kinds of places. Like you have observation homes, you have safety homes, safe homes. Okay, there are multiple options here for different kinds of conditions. Okay, there are special homes. The observation home is the first stage where a child is put in. Basically, observation home is a temporary situation. Like till the time, you know, the final ruling has come or his case has been tried or inquiries have been done, till that the child stays in observation homes. But what they are seeing is that whatever is the total number of children in the system, they say 83% of children are still in observation homes. So these have actually been institutionalized as the main thing. And there's another problem that there's inadequate infrastructure and coverage. So these safe homes and special home is more of that, the permanent home, which is, you know, for long-term rehabilitation. So they haven't been set up in a lot of places. So there's infrastructure lag also here, which means it's not functioning as it should be functioning. So the report has actually found very prominent gaps in what the law wanted to do and what is in the last 10 years actually happened on the ground. So the report also comes up with some recommendations. What should be done? First, of course, you have to strengthen your juvenile justice boards. That's the first step, because in every district will have its own setup to manage it. Then leverage technology for enhancing efficiency. So different types of digital inputs at different stages of processing or monitoring of these children that can be done by using technology. Then prioritizing training. This aspect is very important. See, juveniles, they are at that period, you know, the adolescent age, when they're not really adults or they're not really children, they have to be treated different. There is a certain kind of sensitivity which should be coming into this. And for that, there is a need for definite training for all those people who are associated with them. Like the people who are employed at those homes, the police, the judges, all of that system should be dedicatedly trained to deal with this. It cannot be the same people who are dealing with the adult courts or the adult criminals. They need to have specific specialized training so that the reason, the whole logic why this was created, that could make sense. Then they have to conduct periodic independent evaluation. This is now in the sense, like you can independent evaluation can be like some civil societies, some pressure groups, they can participate in this. And this provision is already there in the law. In the juvenile justice law, there is provision to do this independent evaluation so that you know that there is proper possibility of reform of these children. The next article is about the judiciary's role. This is a very important constitutional question. So the Supreme Court has noted that judiciary cannot impose timelines on president and governor. Okay. Now we'll understand the constitutional aspect of this whole issue and the specifics of the case. So what has happened is this Supreme Court's statement has come as a response to a presidential reference. So the first constitutional provision is Article 143. Article 143, please remember, this is for presidential reference, which means the president can seek opinion of the Supreme Court on significant legal or factual questions. Okay, anything which president needs legal expertise on, it can refer it to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court will then give its opinion. Okay, so president has seeked a presidential reference, and this is the 16th time that this has happened. Okay, since the coming up of the constitution. Now, the issue here, the case is that earlier the Supreme Court, like the April 2025, had mentioned that there is a specific time limit for the governor and the president to act on the bills. Now, here the two constitutional provisions are that there is Article 200 and Article 201. So, first let's look at these articles. Then what is Article 200 and 201? This is about ratification of different bills. Bills which have been passed by legislature, then they go to the governor. So, this is Article 200. So, when a bill is passed by a state legislature, it is presented to the governor. The governor has four options. Either he can assent that, okay, yes, approved, signed, or he can withhold, he can reject it, or he can send it back to reconsideration that, okay, please look at it again. Or the fourth option is he can send it to the president. He can reserve the bill for president's consideration. Now, 201 article, similar theme, assent to bills. So, when a bill is reserved by a governor for consideration of the president, right, the fourth option. So, when that happens, what the president can do is, the president can declare either that he assents to the bill, he can say yes, or he can withhold assent, he can say no, he can return it to the legislature for consideration, and there are no timelines which are specified here. That how long this can be reserved, there is no specific timeline. So the Supreme Court, in the last main issue of this case, had said that there should be a fixed timeline. You cannot just keep it forever. Okay, this will be like a way of the president or the governor not giving assent. They're just withholding it, and that means that law is stuck. It will not. That bill will not become an act. So the Supreme Court, in light of that, said that you have to respect the legislature, and there should be a fixed timeline. That okay, after this timeline, within this timeline, you have to give assent. So this was the issue. Now this is what is being discussed here. This is what the presidential reference is allowed. That is about. That can this be done? So in this presidential reference, there was a 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court which has said that the court cannot impose any timelines on the decision of the president and the governor on granting assent to bills. So now in this, they have overruled the earlier judgment. They've said that there cannot be any timelines. There are a few aspects further which have been discussed here. Let's see the highlights of those judgments. So there is nothing like deemed assent. Deemed assent means like if you fix that, okay, within 6 months you have to give yes, no, approval you have to give. If you don't give, then it is automatically passed. There's nothing like this in our constitution. That's what has been highlighted in this judgment. Deemed assent means that automatically it will become a law. So they say, no, this is alien to our constitution. In our constitution, there's no automatic process which after the time frame will happen. So this means that this provision cannot be there. If this happens, they say that this is judicial usurpation of the constitutional powers. You are overtaking the powers of the president, of the governor, which is against the whole thing of separation of powers. The idea of federal governance, because judiciary has a different role, legislature has a different role, presidents, governor, they all have a different role, and the court cannot automatically be doing the legislative job, right? So this cannot happen. The other thing which the court has also pointed out, that at the same time, the governors and presidents also cannot sit on the bills indefinitely, right? So there's this concept of pocket veto, that there is no timeline, so maybe we can just keep it with us, because they have to either send it back, say yes, no, but here they say that no, you cannot sit on it, this is also not right. You cannot interfere with, you have to respect the legislature, so you don't sit on it indefinitely. Okay. Now, what the courts can do, they've also explained this, that yes, there is a limited power of judicial review, okay, that is there, but they cannot talk about the act itself. They cannot really talk about the merits of the assent. Giving yes, no, sending it back. So they cannot do that, but what they can do is they can look at the process. The review is limited to the process, that has proper process being followed. That is what the courts can check, okay? That process is followed or process is not followed, right? And the last thing which they've said is that the president is not required to seek any advice of the Supreme Court whenever the governor reserves a bill. So it's not mandatory that the president refers to the Supreme Court every time there is a bill reserved by the governor. Their own satisfaction is final, but if they want, they can refer. It's optional, it's not compulsory, right? So the court keeps interpreting the the constitutional provisions just to get a better sense of our understanding of the constitution. Coming to the last big news of the day. This is about the Aravallis. So, Supreme Court directed the center to prepare a management plan for sustainable mining for Aravallis. So, Aravalli Hills are one of the world's oldest formation, and there is this idea that if you have to do mining here, you should have a proper plan for it, and for that, there is this Supreme Court direction which has come. First, let's talk about the Aravallis. Like I told you, one of the world's oldest fold mountains, okay, which are in Gujarat, Rajasthan, Delhi, Haryana, this whole region. This is the Aravallis region. This is the highest peak is Guru Shikhar on Mount Abu, and it is very significant in the ecosystem, in the environmental setup. So it acts as a green barrier, checking the Thar Desert from spreading eastwards. So Thar Desert, you know, that's in Rajasthan area. In between, you have the Aravallis. They're like a barrier so that the desertification does not extend to the Indo-Gangetic plains. Okay, so that means it's keeping the things green on this plain side. Then it acts as a watershed, so the different rivers, wherever there are mountains associated with rivers, so you have the Ganga, Indus basin, it's a watershed between them. Then there are other rivers which their catchment area is in Aravallis, like you have Banas, Luni, Saibi. Then there is this Great Green Wall of Aravallis. So there is a significant ecological corridor. Okay, so ecological corridor, forested area, that's called the Great Green Wall of Aravallis, and there are a lot of vital animals here. Like you have leopards and jackals. They are kind of protected because of this area. And the Ministry of Environment and Forests have launched an Aravalli Green Wall project for overall management of this area, assessment, preservation, conservation of this whole Great Green Wall of Aravallis. Okay, so once we understand the significance, we'll mention the case also. So the case was that the Supreme Court had given directions while hearing. So there was this concept that what comprises the Aravallis. We need a clear, uniform definition. So this is an older case of T.N. Govardhanam Tirumulappad case in 1995. So based on that, Supreme Court had given directions that what will be the uniform definition of Aravallis. What will comprise of the Aravallis? Let's see what the judgment is highlighting. So first is, what is the definition? So definition, it says, so there was a central empowered committee which was set up, and based on their criteria, they have designated that any landform within 100 with a 100-meter elevation and a range as hills within 500-meter proximity. So 100-meter elevation should be there, and in around that region, 500-meter proximity, all of that will be what Aravallis will be. Now, they are talking about this management plan for sustainable mining. So the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change will prepare the plan with the help of Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education. So this plan is going to be where you can do mining, where you cannot do mining, which will be absolutely prohibited area, where partially you can allow, which are ecologically sensitive areas. All of this will be assessed, will be notified under this plan, and along with a dedicated scientific institution, which is forestry research and education. So you want to draw a plan, but with proper research and understanding of what all areas are there, and then demarcating all areas where mining can happen and where mining will be prohibited. Let's talk about the place in news today. Okay, so the place in news is Seychelles. Seychelles here in the Indian Ocean. This is a collection of a lot of islands, and the reason it's in news is because it has become a part of the Colombo Security Conclave. So there is a Colombo Security Conclave. India is also a part of it, and there were 5 nations originally. So that's India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Mauritius. Now you have the 6th one, Seychelles, also joining this. Whenever you read about any new place which you are hearing for the first time, please go and look this up the map. Very important idea here. So this is close to Madagascar, Africa. Let's talk about some quick updates. Some new terms which your newspapers are bringing to you, which you need to know about, even when the context of the news is not important, but the theme, the term, that's very important. Let's see. The first term is dark patterns. Now, this is kind of a deceptive online design tactics, which is misleading to the users into unintended actions such as false urgency or basket sneaking. So it's basically like some techniques which the e-commerce uses, because of which you will be unfairly doing things or purchasing things which otherwise you did not want to. Okay. So the reason it's been in news is there are 26 e-commerce applications which have voluntarily declared that they are going to follow the dark pattern guidelines. The government has come up with these dark pattern guidelines. Say this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. And they have voluntarily said that, okay, we are going to follow this so that it becomes like a more fair, more transparent game for the consumers. Then you have Javelin and Excalibur. The reason they are in news is the US has approved the sale of Javelin anti-tank missile systems and the Excalibur guided artillery munitions. And there are other equipment. So this is a very big defense procurement deal. Defense procurement means you procure defense equipment from other countries. So the deal is 93 million. So India is going to buy these weapons, acquire these from US at 93 millions. So missile system, if you understand, missile is basically going to be like a rocket. It will have its own fuel, its own energy, and then it will go and bombard somewhere. This second thing, Excalibur artillery ammunition, or we call them projectiles also, they don't have their own engine. It's just that some initial force is given to them, and then they can go and hit some place, some location. Okay, just remember these names, and the important thing is which country they are coming from. Usually in prelims, they ask you these kind of questions, that which country is bringing this, so you should know they are coming from USA. Then you have a news on Indian shipping vessels. So the shipping vessels which are there, they had to have an sign-in, sign-off system, or they needed a shore leave passes. So for that, what would happen is all the people like Merchant Navy would be involved. They had to physically go and get permission to like go on shore, go on offshore. And this was needed, like this is an immigration process which was needed when you were going out of Indian waters. But now what they've done is, that it was actually for everybody, not just for outside, going out also, but for everybody this had to be followed. But now the center has said that we are not going to need this sign-in, sign-off process for vessels which are operating in Indian waters. Only if you have to go abroad, then you need it. Otherwise, they have eliminated it. Because the problem was that the shipping industry was complaining that it takes a lot of time, because you have to actually be present. So that takes around 10 days for the whole clearance and everything to happen. So this is a way of promotion, making the process easier for those shippings. Next is a term called pharmacogenomics. So this emerges from pharmacology and genomics. Pharmacology, I'm sure you all understand, the study of medicines, how medicines work. Genomics would be how genes work. So this is to study how genes can influence a person's response to drugs. See, normally we are all taking the same medicines, right? Whatever medicine I take for fever, you take that same medicine. But here what they're saying is that our genetic material, our composition, our DNA, that is different. So medicines will work differently for us. This is a very big advancement on having treatments which work very well for each and every person through this intervention of pharmacogenics. That you check my genes and see what medicine suits me better, what drug, what chemical suits me better, and you give that to me, so my treatment will be very effective. Next is the news on ORS. So everybody knows ORS, everybody's used ORS. So this is oral rehydration salt or oral rehydration solution. So basically this is a WHO formulation. Okay, WHO has given the exact formula on what ORS will be. It is a solution to prevent and treat dehydration and acute diarrheal diseases. So it's a treatment of diarrhea. So you need how much water you need, how much, it's going to have minerals, different kinds of minerals, salts. It's going to have glucose. Glucose gives energy. But the exact amount, how much glucose will be there, how much salt is there, how much water should be there, that is prescribed by WHO, and that has to be followed as such in preparing that. But what is happening is a lot of products locally available, locally manufactured, they'll simply call themselves ORS if they have like a similar electrolyte solution but not the exact one. Now the problem with that is when somebody is dehydrated or when somebody is undergoing diarrhea, if that composition is not right, like especially in children, the problem which is happening is the child is already dehydrated and maybe you give it more salt or less water, more water, that balance is not right because that design which WHO has made, that is based on the body's configuration, the body's composition of fluid. So it's exactly the same. So if that's not followed, it can actually worsen the condition. And it has led to deaths of a lot of children. So because of that, now it has been said that you cannot write ORS if it is not that exact chemical preparation. It cannot be your brand name. That I am pro ORS, I am super ORS or anything like that. You cannot do it. That's the ongoing discussion on ORS. Then you have this Japan's joint crediting mechanism where they have initiated this in 2013 to promote low carbon technologies. They want to have bilateral relationships, like they will engage with different countries and promote or sell or send their low carbon technologies. And you know, the problem with carbon is carbon emission, pollution, climate change. So the aim is that you want to decarbonize. So these are decarbonizing technology. Less carbon means the overall carbon amount will become less. And you want to create infrastructure on that, and that will also be a means of investment for Japanese entities. India has recently called this a very important measure which is really needed for promotion of low carbon technologies. And because of that India's statement, this is in news. Then you have the COP or COP also you call it. So you have United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So this is a conference which is happening every year in different parts of the world, and under this, you have this conference of parties. All the countries, they come together, discuss. This is the biggest framework on climate change, biggest global platform to discuss climate change. Now, currently, it's happening in Brazil, and they had to select the next one. Okay, they had to select where it will happen next year. So two countries had contested for it, Turkey and Australia. Both of them refused to back down. So there's been a long discussion and debate amongst them. So finally a solution has been reached, and the solution is it'll happen in Turkey. Turkey will hold it, and Australia will hold the presidency. So negotiations will be done by Australia. Turkey will host it. So this is like an amicable compromise which has been reached on this. So the next one, which is going to be COP31, is going to be held in Turkey under the presidency of Australia. And in this year's COP30, under Brazil, so there's this new idea, new term which is coming in. It is called Global Motirao. And this is inspired by their indigenous tradition, which refers to as community labor and shared goals. So how they are integrating this idea in climate change is that you need collective responsibility here also, because this is impacting everybody. So they say that they have adopted this as a way of global climate mobilization tool. Everybody has to collectively work because we have a shared goal of managing climate change and work towards that same goal collectively. So this is about our discussion on different topics, key ideas of the day. Once you've seen this video, you're in a very good position. Please go through your news today. Go through all the topics. You'll find more details there. But we've gone through the conceptual part, so you'll be able to understand them better. After you've done that, you go and solve the questions. The MCQs which are there, they'll help you, again, remember those things better once you try and solve this question. And on any of these topics, if you want further details, if you want to know more, this is where you go. You have the digital current affairs website of Vision IAS. Please visit this, search the topic, and you'll find more details which will help you prepare yourself for the exam. Thank you.